Halloween is coming back even sooner than we thought. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champane, and man, I am excited today to talk about Halloween. Yes, we have new info on the next Halloween movies and or TV shows that could happen in the future, and I could not be more excited because, as you know, if you've ever seen this channel, Halloween is definitely my favorite thing to talk about. Before I jump into it, though, it would really help me out if you subscribed and set your notifications to all. I've mentioned this a couple times, but I'm trying my best to get to 100,000 subs, and I think this is the year where I can do it. And if we keep getting Halloween news like this, I think it's going to happen even sooner than I thought. Alright, so today we're talking about an exclusive report from Bloody Disgusting about Halloween. And basically what it's letting us know is that Miramax, the current sort of rights holder, like the rights for Halloween, I guess are split up between a few different companies, between like Trancas and Miramax and a couple of others. But Miramax ultimately, it seems like, is the company who decides what production company the rights end up at. So with Blumhouse and Universal, I guess back in the day, like before Halloween 2018 was announced, they would have had a meeting with Universal and said, hey, we have the rights. Universal would bid some money alongside Blumhouse, and then Universal and Blumhouse would distribute and produce the movie respectively, and then Miramax would make money when the movie comes out because they own the rights ultimately. So it's a pretty simple and basic setup, especially in the world of movies. But of course, as we all know, Universal only had a 3-picture deal. They did Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends, and then I'm assuming they had the option to kind of go back to the table with Miramax and Trancas and everyone else and say, hey, we'd like to make more Halloween movies. But as we heard from Blumhouse and I guess Universal and pretty much everyone involved with the last trilogy of Halloween movies, they don't want to work on it anymore. So we get new stuff from the franchise, and Miramax, just like we talked about over the past couple months with A Nightmare on Elm Street, is taking pitches from anybody and everybody. Now, I could not be more thankful for this exclusive report from Bloody Disgusting for a few reasons. The first one being, if you caught my video, I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, where it was like 5 ways Halloween could come back, I kind of just talked about my opinions on it. I kind of let it slip a little, like on purpose, that I had heard from multiple sources that it looked like the direction Halloween was heading post Halloween Ends would be a new TV series. And if you've watched the channel for a while, that was nothing new to you, just because back when I think Halloween Kills was still being ramped up, Malik Akkad was doing interviews with a bunch of different sources and websites and saying stuff like, oh yeah, I think Halloween would work super well as a TV series. We'll see where the franchise goes, if we're going to do more movies with Blumhouse and Universal, or if we'll try something new and do a TV series. Obviously, the better option happened, which was getting 2 more movies in the franchise, but that TV series idea has always seemed to be on Malik Akkad's mind. Also, I've talked about this before, but I've heard on multiple different horror podcasts, and I've heard it behind the scenes, that the one IP piece of the Halloween franchise that the Akkad side of the fence really wants to go for at this point is Halloween 3. I've heard that there's going to be a new movie in the Halloween 3 universe. I've heard that there's going to be a TV series in the Halloween 3 universe. The whole thing that I keep hearing over and over again is that they want to revisit Halloween 3. So coming back to why I'd be thankful for this Bloody Disgusting report if I already knew a lot of this info, is that this report is the first time I'm personally hearing that they're also really aggressively taking pitches on movies, which kind of sounds like the best of both worlds to me, right? Like, Michael Myers, in my opinion at least, does not belong on TV. I don't think you need a Peacock show or a Netflix show or an HBO Max show about Halloween, because the whole point of Halloween to me is that it's simple, it's effective, and the focus should be on Michael Myers killing people. If you separate that up between like a 6-hour TV show versus an hour and 30 to a 2-hour movie, you automatically have to pepper in a bunch of plot, a bunch of characters, a bunch of side stuff that no one's really going to care about, because the longer you go between Michael Myers showing up and murdering someone, the more boring that show is going to become. Back when Halloween 2018 was coming out, there were TV shows in the horror world coming out left and right. We had stuff like the Leprechaun Returns movie on Sci-Fi. They did a Banana Splits movie. We also had Channel Zero. We had Ash vs. Evil Dead. We had Chucky. And now the only one that kind of remains, I think if I'm correct here, is Chucky. So all of these TV shows, which I watched all of, like I watched everything from Castle Rock all the way down to Chucky, and I'm still watching Chucky, they all ran into the same issue, which is what I was just talking about, which is when you're doing a slasher series, series, it's really hard to make people stay on board for more than a couple hours just because we're all there for the same reason, right? Like practical kills, to see some characters that we maybe like or maybe don't get killed by a masked villain, and it's going to be cool and have tons of practical effects like I already mentioned, and hopefully if it's a Halloween thing, has a really good Halloween vibe. But with that being said, Halloween 3 is 100% the outlier in the Halloween franchise. In terms of both kills and plot, like the plot in Halloween 3 is like corporate espionage. It's almost a spy movie. Like one of the best shots in the entire movie is when Dr. Chalice is running between the spotlights trying to get to the factory because everything, like all the shit is hitting the fan, and it's a classic John Carpenter one take. Even though he didn't direct the movie, the camera stays close behind him and the cameraman's running with the steady cam behind Dr. Chalice, and the energy in that scene. I've seen this movie on the big screen at the Alamo Drafthouse. I've watched it 1,000 times on VHS. I've watched it 1,000 more times on Blu-ray. That scene always gets my heart racing because it's such a cool idea, and also the fact that a corporation is the bad guy. It's very Stranger Things-esque, very 80s obviously, but that stuff is coming back around in a big way right now, so I feel like going after corporations in a TV show based on Halloween 3 is just a no-brainer situation because there's so much you can do in that world. Also, you could do an anthology style thing like the original goal was for Halloween 3, where every year there would be a new Halloween movie, but it would be a standalone original thing, to the point where they made a point to put scenes from Halloween on a TV in Halloween 3 to say, hey, this does not exist in the same universe as Michael Myers and the first Halloween movie, so forget that, this is its own new thing. So a TV show, just like with American Horror Story or Tales from the Walking Dead, that lends itself so well to an anthology route, and focusing on the Halloween 3 universe is, in my opinion at least, the single best way they could do that. And I've also seen all the people talking about post-Halloween Kills where we got that awesome makeup on that actor to make him look like Donald Pleasance, and it was flawless. Like that guy looked so much like Donald Pleasance that you could have told me they resurrected that dude, and for a split second before it registered what you actually said, I totally would have believed you. And the sound alike that they got was also really good. So people have been saying since that movie came out that a really good option would be to do a Dr. Loomis TV series. I know my friend Barry over at Wolfman's Got Nards, I think he did a fan poster for a potential Dr. Loomis series and he casted Sean Connery in the role, which would be incredible. I think that would be cool, right? Like to do a mini series, but we already have that in the Rob Zombie universe. The first Rob Zombie movie focuses heavily on Michael's childhood. We see Dr. Loomis hanging out with Michael, trying to deconstruct who he is, and then ultimately deciding that this kid is lost. He is no longer a child. He is no longer a human. He's just this evil force that's going to run around murdering people. And that was cool, right? It was done well, and it's still the biggest criticism that everyone has for that movie. Too much kid Michael, not enough adult Michael, and the adult Michael we get is essentially Jason. So if you ask me if I really want a Dr. Loomis TV show, I'm going to say no on that one, and now we kind of have to move on into movies because this is what I really want to focus on. My ideal next Halloween movie, there's two options, I think. I've thought about this a lot since I did the video on 5 ways to bring it back, and really, like I just said, there's only 2 ways I would want this to go. I just talked about Dr. Loomis, so I'll stick with that. One thing they could do that I think would be incredible, it would be a little expensive, but it would be, mark my words, absolutely phenomenal, is get the crew together who worked on the production of the flashback. So not necessarily David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, like cut them out entirely, like even maybe get John Carpenter to come back and write this movie, like a new Halloween 3 to take place after Halloween 2 or something like that, but rebuild that set and get that costume, get that stunt actor, get the DP, get Christopher Nelson, get all the people who made that flashback scene work as incredibly well as it does, and get them to work together to make a flashback set movie. Like set a Halloween movie in 1982 where somehow Michael Myers is back despite being blown up by Dr. Loomis at the end of Halloween 2, and then make it so that Dr. Loomis isn't there, right? Like that's a huge option they could go with, where new people have to figure out how to fight Michael and they wouldn't have to rely on Laurie Strode or anyone else. It could be a new group of kids in Haddonfield taking on Michael. Or in that same universe, they could keep Loomis alive as well, kind of retcon the end of Halloween 2 and have it focus on him once again as the main character. So it would be a sequel to Halloween 2 that retcons the ending and keeps him as the main character, and you could easily write Laurie out of it and just focus mainly on him instead of having a final girl. Both of those options would be perfect in my opinion, and I would love to see it. Of course, the second thing you could do is a full-on remake or reboot of the franchise. I think you could leave in at least the first 2 movies and say, like, look, back in 1979 and 1981, Michael Myers went on a killing rampage in the town of Haddonfield. He was blown up at the end by the heroic acts of his psychologist, Dr. Loomis, and he hasn't been seen in 45 years, and we're wondering if and when he'll ever come back. At that point, he's just a Halloween story that parents tell to their kids at night around October. But then suddenly Michael Myers is back. He's here in the modern day. He's more brutal, just like he was in the new trilogy, and they don't have to do the thing where they bring Laurie Strode back to figure out what happened in the past and how to beat him. Michael Myers is the character that you ultimately can't beat. The only way you can beat him is to get away from him. And then at the end of the movie, when Halloween night ends, Michael Myers goes away, and then the people have to wonder when he'll show up back again. That, of course, provides endless opportunity for sequels and to just keep going with new stories every single Halloween. But the one constant that would remain is, of course, Michael Myers and Haddonfield. I feel like you need both of those things, and the movie has to be set around Halloween. So the three constants actually are Michael Myers, Haddonfield, and the movie being set on Halloween night. Shit, I said there's only two options they could do. They could also just totally reboot it and have it be set in the modern day. Like, totally eliminate the entire backstory that we've had before, not do a requel in any way, and just say, what does Halloween look like in the modern day? So there was kind of a script floating around for this called Halloween Returns. It did keep in the original lore, but it focused on a whole new group of kids. Like, Michael Myers was going to be on death row. He was going to survive the electric chair and kind of make his way around an insane asylum and go after a whole new group of kids. The script is incredible. You can actually read it. It's out there. I'm not going to put it in my description or anything because I don't want to get in trouble. But if you search for Halloween Returns, Brad Miska at Bloody Disgusting has a great sort of run through where he goes through the entire script synopsis, and it's a really interesting read. So there are plenty of scripts out there. In fact, there was one script that's coming to mind now. I'm pretty sure, like 90 or like 80% sure, that it was Beck and Woods who wrote it. They kind of talked about their pitch for a Halloween movie, and Michael Myers in this new universe would be a vagrant, and he would be like just a normal guy. So 364 days out of the year, he's a vagrant. He's traveling around the United States. He's doing odd jobs, but then at midnight on Devil's Night, when Halloween starts, he puts on the Michael Myers mask and picks a new victim. They had a new victim all written out. It was going to be a girl who's trapped alone in her house, and then the rampage would end at the end of Halloween night with him just walking away, getting in a pickup truck and driving away. And honestly, it's so different from what we've come to expect from Michael over the years, but it still sounds so cool that I feel like it's close enough where you could keep that Halloween name, and it really wouldn't be so far off that it doesn't feel like Halloween. I feel like the third act of these videos is always where I would have it end up, and honestly, knowing that Universal is off the table, I feel like Warner Brothers, just like with A Nightmare on Elm Street, Warner Brothers would be a great pick just because they're kind of down to the wire, right? Like, they need successful movies. Horror movies have lower budgets, but if you look at horror movies that Warner Brothers has done, especially with New Line over the past decade or so, they have been killing it. The Conjuring franchise is great outside of The Nun and The Curse of La Llorona and kind of The Conjuring 3, right? Like, that one's not that good. It Chapter 1, absolutely phenomenal. I talk about it all the time, how it's one of my favorite movies to revisit. It Chapter 2 is solid. I wouldn't call it great, again, because of the CGI. I brought this up a lot lately. Annabelle 3 is super underrated. Like, there are so many good movies in Warner Brothers sort of Rolodex of horror that I feel like they can nail a new Halloween movie. Lionsgate would be another great pick. I feel like they've got that edge with the new Saw movie, Saw X, coming out. They're kind of going back to their early 2000s roots. They, of course, also put out Cobweb earlier this year, which if you need a movie to watch this Halloween, Cobweb is definitely, for me at least, this year's Barbarian, but it has a much better Halloween feel. I thought it was so awesome. I know a lot of people are saying that it's like a 3.5 out of 5 movie, but if you're someone like me who loves Halloween and everything surrounding the holiday, it's basically a perfect little Halloween story, so I can't recommend it enough. And knowing that they also have a Strangers trilogy coming out from Rennie Harlow, I think that actually sounds pretty cool. So knowing that they have all this slasher stuff in the works, it would be cool to see them sort of throw on a Halloween movie. I don't think anyone would argue that Spyglass killed it with Scream 5 and 6, so to see them also add Halloween to the roster would be great. Regardless, there's a ton of good options out there for who could take over Halloween, and I feel like there's really no bad option outside of maybe A24. I feel like an A24 Halloween movie would be great, but like in all the ways I don't want it to be. I feel like they'd focus more on the main characters and the plot and all that stuff, whereas I want to see a Halloween movie where it's Michael Myers killing people as the focus, and I don't know, I feel like A24 wouldn't really do that with whoever they pick to direct their own Halloween. Sorry to any artists out there who want to give their personal take on Halloween. It's just not for me. You don't have to make a movie for me. You can make it for everyone else who would love it. And since we're at the end of the video, I'll leave you with one more small thing. So I don't know if you saw these rumors going around that Supermassive Games, the people behind Until Dawn, The Quarry, the Dark Pictures games, are working on a Scream game where it's going to be a playable movie style game against Ghostface. And I'm not saying you should go back and watch watch my videos on 5 ways I'd bring back a Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween. But if you do, you might notice a consistent theme during the video game sections of those videos. All I'm saying is it pays to watch my channel and pay attention, guys. So subscribe, set your notifications to all. As always, my name is Jimmy Champane. I'll see you in the next one. Happy Halloween and Champane.